So again, good morning and welcome. I'm Adrienne DeWolf, and I'll be presenting iLead this morning, sponsored by the Contra Costa County Office of Education. I work at CCCOE as an ed tech specialist and help districts with training, tech planning, grant writing, and anything else that they might need in that area. I'm going to go ahead and share with you that my slideshow here, Google Slides, is on the wiki that you originally registered for, and I will send that URL out again. But all of my slides have both notes when appropriate, as well as the slides with all the links that I'll be sharing with you today. With that said, I'm going to go ahead and go to full screen. And hopefully you're seeing my first slide here. So we're going to start by talking about communication. It was very difficult to narrow down all the many facets of the way that you could use your iPad as a leader on a campus. But I think probably one of the most important ways, and one of the ways that is easiest with an iPhone or an iPad, is using it to support communication on your campus. And I wanted to share this quote from George Couros. Most of you that responded to my survey said that you either weren't yet using Twitter or you were sort of new to Twitter. If you haven't drunk the Twitter Kool-Aid yet, I definitely have. It took me a while, so I understand some people's reluctance. But Twitter has become such an amazing learning network for educators. And this is a quote that George Couros posted. And he said that if every teacher tweeted one thing a day that they did in their classroom to a school hashtag, and they took 5 minutes out of their day to read each other's tweets, what impact would that have on learning and school culture? So just think about that for a minute. As far as the sharing and beyond the classroom walls, I'm out of the classroom now, but I know that when I was, it was very difficult to get a sense of what was going on in the other classrooms beyond the grades that I was planning with my grade. And then if you expand that to even other campuses within your district or other schools around the world, the possibilities are really endless. So I want to encourage you with Twitter, and I want to show you one way that a school is using Twitter to communicate with their community. You may have heard of Adam Welcome. He's been sharing this a lot. John Sweat Elementary School. I'm going to go to their website so I can show it to you. And they have right on their website here, hopefully that's big enough for you all to see, they have their Twitter feed right up front here. And what they did was I mentioned that hashtag, or maybe George Couros did in his quote. They did as a staff, a team building activity where they came up with a hashtag, which are used to categorize tweets if you're not familiar with Twitter. So they chose this hashtag TeamKid to be for their John Sweat Elementary School hashtag. And that was what they were about. So every time one of their teachers or even community members post something that has to do with their elementary school, they use that hashtag TeamKid so that you can follow that hashtag. Not only can you follow an individual, but you can also follow a hashtag. And just by scrolling down, you can see all the various different grades and what they're posting. His teachers are pretty much all on Twitter and using it to share things. But the way that he got this started was he just started going into classrooms when he went through for his regular visits and asked to take a picture of something going on in that classroom and asked the teacher if it would be okay if he posted it on his Twitter account to share out to the world. And of course, he was very careful initially with what and how he posted. But as you can see, it really gives you an idea of what is going on every day, a snapshot of many of the activities in their classrooms. And some teachers obviously post more than others, but it really is a nice way not only for them to share with each other, but for him to push that out to his whole community. Now, it doesn't need to be Twitter. I'm not endorsing Twitter in particular, but I think social media is such a powerful thing to use that we need to figure out what the best tool for our particular community is. So if they're on Pinterest, then maybe that's what you want to do. But your iPad makes it so simple to take a picture and share that out with others. There's two apps that I want to share with you, Hootsuite and TweetDeck, which make it a lot easier to manage Twitter. So if you start to get into this Twitter thing, you're probably going to want to have not only your school account, like the John Sweat Elementary account, but you're going to want to have your individual account, your professional account. And it can get very cumbersome on the Twitter site or the Twitter app to log in and log out of multiple accounts. So it's really helpful to use something like Hootsuite or TweetDeck to manage those multiple accounts. And I'm going to go ahead and show you my iPad here through mirroring, which we'll talk about in a minute. So hopefully this is going to work. You should be seeing, it says Reflector 2. That's the app I'm using to mirror my iPad. So right now you're looking at my iPad. And I'm going to go ahead and show you my Hootsuite app. So this is Hootsuite, and this is how I manage multiple Twitter accounts. So DigiChica is my professional Twitter handle, but I also have one through work. We have an Ed One Stop account, and let me show you, let me move between accounts here and show you why this is so helpful. So you can see I was showing you my DigiChica feed, but I can also go to our Ed One Stop account without having to log in or out. So here I can see the people I'm following as my Ed One Stop user, as well as anyone that's mentioning me. And when I go to post in Hootsuite, by clicking on that little pencil, it'll ask me which networks do I want to post from. So I could post from both DigiChica and Ed One Stop. So you could post from both your professional account and your school account, or maybe it's just for my professional account. But as you can see, it just makes it so much easier to manage multiple accounts once you get into Twitter. So that's something to think about and keep in mind. If your Twitter use grows, you will definitely want to try to use TweetDeck or Hootsuite. All right, I'm going to go out of my iPad and back to our presentation here. And I apologize for the back and forth, but I thought it would be most helpful, since we're talking about iPads, if I was actually able to show you my iPad at times. So that's what that's about. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more briefly about Twitter and why I think it's a good option to use. Because as I mentioned, if your parents are on Facebook, if that's a better place for the social media tool of their choice, then use Facebook. The beauty about Twitter, though, is that people do not have to have a Twitter account to follow you. So if my son's fourth grade teacher has her Twitter account for her classroom, where she's tweeting out images and text about what they're doing in class, I can simply have those delivered to my text on my phone, on any phone, okay? So all you have to do, and again, these slides will be posted, so you'll have all these notes, but in order to follow somebody without a Twitter account through your phone, you simply have to put 404-04 in the to portion, as though that's who you're texting. And in the subject line, you simply put follow the @ symbol and the name of the user that you're trying to follow. And then all of those tweets will be delivered to your text messaging on your phone. Now, obviously, I wouldn't probably want to follow somebody who's tweeting many, many, many things on a daily basis, because all those things are going to go to my text. But for a teacher, for my individual student who I really want to see what's going on in the classroom, it's a very delightful way as a parent to have those images, the things delivered, to kind of give me an idea of what's going on and to feel connected to that classroom. Finally, the Remind app is another one to keep in mind, that this actually is designed to simply use text messaging to communicate. And the Remind app through your iPad, if you download it, it's a free app. It allows you to send out messages through texting and it conceals your phone number as well as the receiver's phone number. So your parents or even your students, Remind has been used with students, simply sign up through texting to receive your text messages from your Remind account. And then when they receive a text message from you, it doesn't tell them your personal cell phone number, but it's another great way to be able to share and communicate with your community using your iPad. Okay, so again, if you have questions or any issues, please post them in our questions window. I will be checking to see if there's any questions posted. I don't see anything at the moment, so I'm going to keep going. And I see one more from Minda. Let me just take a minute to go ahead and look at that. Okay, great. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and move on. And Eileen, you jump in here if you're listening, if there's anything that you need to remind me about as far as the questions. All right, so I just wanted to show this image to you because for some of you, if you're new to Twitter and I just said Hootsuite and TweetDeck and hashtags and Remind, you might be feeling a little awash in new ideas. But I want to share with you this idea about being a connected educator. And if we want to lead in a way that we can walk the walk and talk the talk for our staff, then we need to show them also what it is like to push ourselves a little bit, to try a new piece of tech once a month, to connect with others on Twitter, or again, it could be Pinterest or some other social media. Perhaps thinking about creating a blog, understanding how to connect with other schools or even beyond our local area. So I thought this was just a really nice image to kind of share what the connected educator might look like and how we could model that with our teachers. So we're going to talk a little bit about using your iPad to make staff meetings more engaging. So modeling uses in your staff meetings that also your staff might then say, you know what, this would be a great way to use this in my classroom. So I wanted to share with you this cartoon because we've all been at a staff meeting or a training where we've pretty much wanted to do what's in this image. And as you could see, I'm just going to read it to you unless it's too small, but it says, Mike, Carmel, you go to the garden store and get 5 bags of lime. Dana, Gord, Jill, get me a tarp and carpet. Then check Google Earth for a secluded stretch of highway. The rest of you, you'll help me bury the facilitator, who, ironically, has apparently just led the most successful team building exercise in our community's history. So this is obviously the kind of facilitator we do not want to do. We want our staff to be engaged and feel a part of staff meetings. And our iPad can really help with that. So one of the first things you need to think about with your iPad, and maybe some of you are already doing this, is cutting that wire. So instead of connecting your iPad with your cable to your laptop and then projecting it to show your staff, by simply downloading onto whatever laptop you're projecting from a piece of software called Air Server or Reflector, which basically takes the place of Apple TV. So if you're lucky enough to have Apple TV, you do not need this software. But Apple TV costs over $100. Air Server and Reflector are about $10 per computer. So for about $10, I can load this on my laptop, and then when I connect my laptop to my projector, I can then mirror my iPad onto my laptop, and I can walk around with that device wireless, not connected. And one of the great things to do with that iPad then is to use it as a walking document camera. So imagine a teacher walking around their classroom, students are sharing a writing piece, and you have a student volunteer to share a portion of theirs. While they read it aloud, you could use your iPad, walk over to their desk. Instead of having to have them come up to your document camera, you could come to them and you could show the rest of the class what it is they're reading from, or what drawing they've done, or what artifact they've brought in to share by simply using that iPad as a walking document camera. Another great way to make your meetings more interactive is to consider an audience response system. And I've listed and included a link to the Socrative app, but there's many out there. There's Kahoot, there's several others out there. This is one of the ones that's been around a bit longer that I'm more comfortable with, so that's why I went ahead and put it there. But they're very simple to use. They're free. At least Socrative is free. And it allows you during your meetings to have your staff respond to questions through their phone or their iPad, and it allows you to lead it by using the Socrative app through your iPad. So if you like to do PowerPoint slides or Google presentation, I want to steer you towards a very special presentation app for the iPad called Haiku Deck. So I'm going to go ahead and switch again to my iPad. So I'm going to show you that screen so I can show you Haiku Deck. And some of you may already be familiar with Haiku Deck. So it's an iOS app, and it also now has a web application. And Haiku Deck is an image-driven presentation application. So as you can see, this is one way that my son used it, is he made a haiku deck about definitions that they were working on. So one of the words was stately, okay? And he was supposed to create a drawing or find an image that illustrated that he understood the meaning of that word stately. And so when you use Haiku Deck, it actually searches Creative Commons images and finds an image that it thinks fits that word. So for example, I'm going to go to a blank slide. Here, let me show you just a couple other examples. That's his definition or his sentence using the word stately. This was the next word that he had to define, which was ruthless. The ruthless man took the bone away from the hungry dog. Here's an image, picturesque. So I'm just scrolling through this majestic to give you an idea of how engaging the Haiku Deck presentation is, because it's these beautiful full screen images. It really limits the amount of text. So death by PowerPoint text, it limits the amount that we can include on a slide. So I'm going to go to a new slide now and really quickly show you a couple of the features. So again, you can add text to a slide. You can also do an image search. So for example, if I was looking, let's do that first word we were talking about, and let's see what it comes up with. So Haiku Deck is going to search all the Creative Commons images that have been tagged with something like stately, may not exactly be that word, but something like that. And it will also show students the other tags that might go with that word. The other thing you can do now in Haiku Deck is you can add charts. So very simply, you can use this in class on the go to even create a chart for students, a graph or something about whatever it is you might be doing that day to get their input and quickly show them the various types of charts. As you can see, there's a bar graph, there's a pie chart. I'm not exactly sure what that one's called, but there's another chart. And there you have your standard sort of slide where you can select a layout. And as I mentioned, you can include as much text as you want as well. So that's Haiku Deck. And I'm going to go ahead and quit mirroring here through Reflector. And I'm going to go back to my computer screen, hopefully, if all works well. Great. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to share with you are QR codes. How many of you are familiar with QR codes? If you could raise that hand, then you might want to give me an idea if you raised your hand to show me how many of you are familiar with QR codes. But QR codes, and this one is actually a QR code that links to my blog with an article about QR codes. So you've probably seen these or are familiar, but perhaps you don't realize how very simple these QR codes are to use. On this article that I'll take you to in a minute, I give you a resource where all you need to do is paste a URL into a window in order to create a QR code that would link to an online video or a website, some resource that you want to get your staff or your classroom kids to. It could even be a Google survey, for example. So the beauty of a QR code is by simply holding up your iPad with a QR code scanning app like Enigma, which is listed on the article I'll show you, you can basically take a picture and go straight to whatever that content is that you're wanting to share. So for example, I'm going to go ahead and take you to my website. If you want to read more about QR codes, this gives you the nuts and bolts of how to make one, how to save it, and some ways that you might use them in your classroom. But would be a really fun way to have staff come in if you printed out your QR codes on their tables, if you wanted them to then participate perhaps in a Google survey to give you some feedback or input on a topic. A much more engaging way than simply a pencil and paper activity. And you're modeling a great use of those iPads. So other things that you might want to model to your staff to make things more engaging, particularly apps that would be good for them to know about in their classrooms. So these are probably my top 4. Padlet is a really important one for you to know about. And the reason I wanted to share with you Padlet is because it works really well with the iPad. One of the tricky things about an iPad is getting student work off the iPad. It can be, depending on how your campus has this set up, it can be a little tricky for teachers to have a dependable system for getting student work off the iPad and onto the cloud or somewhere that the teacher can then access it. And Padlet works really well. There's a lot of different sticky note apps is what I'll call them, online sticky note apps out there. But Padlet is one that used to be called Wall Wisher. It's been around for a while, but it works really well with the iPad. So not only can you have students post to a Padlet, but you could also share images or other content links on a Padlet that you wanted your students to be able to check out. Here's an example in a first grade classroom of a teacher using Padlet for her KWL chart on frogs. And as you can see, there she has just QR codes printed out to each Padlet that she wants her students to go to. And here's her kiddos' Padlets. So each one posted initially what they thought they already knew about frogs. Again, these are first graders. Frogs eat insects. Some frogs are blue. So you can post text. You can also post images and video on Padlets. And then they had another Padlet, a separate one, that they posted things that they wanted to learn. So that's a great use of a Padlet in a first grade classroom. How about in a third grade classroom? I mentioned that you can post images. This is a classroom that was studying polygons in the real world, and the students went around and with an iPad, their teacher gave them a link to Padlet, which is a web tool. So she made this Padlet website through her free account. It's very simple to use. And the students simply tap on the Padlet to upload their picture of a hexagon that they found, and they labeled it. So image driven, great way to collaborate and get students to share their work. finally, I wanted to show you a high school example that's incredibly awesome. This is a high school class that was reading the Odyssey, and they made a visual summary of the Odyssey using the page numbers in the Odyssey. And as you can see, you can scroll on and on and on. So think of it as endless paper, so to speak, that you can make as big as you need to get to. So that's the high school example for Padlet. Pick Collage is another app, and we're running a little short on time, but I want to go ahead and show you a little bit about Pick Collage because this is one that would be a lot of fun to use in staff meetings. So these are two samples that were made with Pick Collage. This is a sample made by a fourth grader, and as you can see, its name is what it is. It's a collage of pictures, but you can also add quite a bit of text to that collage or poster. So in a staff meeting or an event that's happening on campus, you could model taking images with your iPad and creating a pic collage with a little summary of what happened during that event, maybe some fun happening or training that went on to share with your staff. There's a lot of uses for pic collage. You can not only make it mostly image driven, but you can see from this second grade Panda report that you could even use it to write your report on the iPad. And again, it's a free app that's very simple to use, but very open-ended and creative. So briefly, I just want to remind you that if you're using Google Apps for Education, Google now has an app for every single one of its applications for education. So they've just recently added Google Slides. It used to be that you could not edit Google Slides on your iPad, and now you can very simply edit your docs, your slides, get access to all of your docs and images through Google Drive. And Google Hangout is another one that works really well on the iPad that might be a fun way to try a staff meeting. Finally, productivity apps were not real high on your response for those of you that responded to my survey about what you wanted to learn today. But I do want to mention that a Common Core app is a must-have on your iPad because right there it makes all the Common Core standards accessible. You can search them. I happen to like the Mastery Connect one that I've linked here, but there are others as well. Pocket and Digo are also apps for saving blogs and sites to read later or share with others on your iPad. So when you're coming through and you find a great blog article, but you just don't have time to read it, you can simply use the Pocket app, again, all free, and save that on your iPad so that the next time you do have a few minutes to do some personal learning, you can open it up and do that reading. So I hope that that today was useful to you. I thought this was such a funny cartoon. I had been wanting to use this in some way. So many apps, so little time. Everything that I've shared with you today with my notes and links to those apps as well as examples are on our wiki. I will send a follow-up email with that, but you did go to that wiki originally to register. And I hope that you found something useful for you today. I'm going to close by showing you the wiki and where everything is posted. But I do want to remind you that you can follow me on Twitter, and you can also review my blog, which many of the articles and examples I shared with you today are from, or email me with any follow-up questions. So let's go ahead and go to the CCOE Professional Development Wiki. And this is the Power of the Common Core with Administrators. So it's cccoepd.pbworks.com. And as you scroll down for today's presentation, there is a link to my Google presentation and all of the notes along with it. I will also be posting a recording from today's presentation and webinar. So thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate your time, and I hope that you will get out there and explore a little as a connected educator, push yourself to try a new piece of tech, and model some great uses with your iPad to your staff and use it in engaging ways. Thank you so much for your time.